Alright, it is time I review Loki. Now, I know I don't really review the MCU shows, but I feel like I want to review them at some point. But let's talk about Loki. So, I gotta say, the season 1 and 2 final all wrap up perfectly. And I might as well give my thoughts on the overall show of Loki, since I think this might be the final season. So, Loki takes place after Avengers Endgame. Spoilers, if you don't know, when the Avengers are time traveling to reverse the Thanos snap, they accidentally lose the Tesseract when the Avengers go back to 2012, and Loki grabs it and he uses it, and we're seeing what that Loki is doing. And basically, Loki is now in the outside of space and time as he meets the TVA, who basically are like the time cops for time travel and how the universe works for time. It's a bit confusing, but the more you watch it, the more you'll see. And I gotta say, easily the best part of this show is Tom Hiddleston. He is an excellent actor. He's very charming, and he's a very likable man. And he despite him being one of the nicest actors, he can play the very sinister Loki. But what I really like about Loki in this show is that they actually have him change as a character. Like, he's constantly being mischievous. He's constantly wanting to cause mayhem. He constantly is either on Thor's side, or eventually he betrays him, like in Infinity War, where he gives Thanos the Tesseract. But this show, the people around him he meets is what really drives him to save the TVA, which is more explored in season 2. And we meet Owen Wilson's character, Mobius. I really like Mobius. I don't know, he's just like a good mentor character to Loki. That's how I view Mobius. And it first starts off as a sort of police interrogation, but Mobius tries to get Loki to admit that he enjoys hurting others, and Loki is just being himself, of course. But as Loki is freed, I guess, he goes on this time journey to basically go on various time missions, but isn't until he meets the variants of himself, where he meets Sylvie, she becomes relevant later in the show, and she basically falls in love with Loki. Loki falls in love with her. He's basically in love with himself, and I don't know, this whole variant stuff is very cool because it explores the multiverse. And we also meet other variants of Loki, like an alligator Loki. I thought that was cute. Yeah, we see older Loki, a kid Loki, a barbaric Loki, just various Lokis. And President Loki, and as Loki's going through the waste of time, he is trying to basically save the TVA from the man who created it, and he's basically going to cause havoc in time. His name is He Who Remains, played by Jonathan Majors. And I honestly thought when we saw him in the season 1 finale, I thought he'd be like Kang, but he's basically, I think he's a variant of Kang, and I'm very fascinated by how he controls time itself. But later in season 2, Loki basically is dealing with time issues because time is starting to become damaged, because Sylvie, at the end of season 1, ends up killing He Who Remains because everything that's been going on. And Loki is basically getting decurated from time. Like, he has to literally pull himself out of this whole time stuff with the help of Short Round's character. I'm surprised he was in the show. And Loki ends up getting pulled out of time, and basically what it is like Loki now has to go on a journey to find everyone from the TVA, Miss Minute, Sylvie, and that's basically what those episodes explore. They're kind of slow for me at first, but as this story goes on, I think this show gets a lot better. Once we start seeing the emotion Loki has finally, he actually seems to care for his friends, despite the TVA being somewhat fake, since their minds have all been wiped, basically, and they're basically forced to just work this job at the TVA. and even Sylvie notices it. But it isn't until, because of what she did in season 1, time is starting to disappear because Loki ends up and Mobius end up trying to find a variant of He Who Remains, and they find an 1800s version who basically wrote the TVA with the help of Short Round's character, and they end up having to open a time world to fix the timeline, Jonathan Major's character ends up getting erased, and time is basically destroyed, and as our characters are sent to their real lives, I guess, Loki is somehow able to learn to control his time and his time slipping, and he ends up basically having to redo everything. This is what happens in the finale, spoilers. He ends up trying to find ways to prevent all the bad things that are happening in time, but instead, at the final moment, he opens a portal. He steps out in the outside of time, and he somehow is okay, and he ends up taking all the time branches, whatever it's called, and he ends up fixing the timeline. Basically, what all they needed was someone to control all the timelines and have them in order. And that's what Loki does, and it's basically ends his character arc, and that's Loki season 2. I give it like an 8 out of 10 or 9. The finale was great. I thought we were going to get a lot more, but I think they wrapped up everything perfectly, even with like Mobius, Sylvie. Their characters are shown, like Mobius is shown to have a family, and he finally looks at them for one last moment. And I did like the episode where Loki basically rescues all his friends from the time they were in before the TVA, but that's basically Loki season 2 and season 1. A really good show. I wish Loki could have a moment to reunite with Thor, but maybe in the future. I don't know. But Loki season 2 was great. The show overall, I'd give an 8 out of 10. I think it's one of the best Marvel shows out of all these MCU shows. So, what do you think of Loki? And maybe I'll review the other MCU shows. So, with that being said, thanks for watching, and see you guys next time.